All right, so we should probably start off with a truth table. So let's do a truth table first. Oh, because I didn't read the full problem. Let me see what they said. Determine the truth values. Oh, okay. So for part A, there's two parts. Part A says P is true, Q is false, and R is true. And for part B, they want P is false, Q is true, and R is true. All right, so let's do this. So we got P, Q. Let's do the not P and not Q part. And then we'll do the not P and not Q or not R. Whoops. All right, there's only two that we're looking for. So I'll just draw a line here. Oh, I forgot one more column, the R column. Whoops. All right, so let me extend that out over here. Oh, actually, that's bad. Let me try that one more time. And P, Q, R. I forgot the R column. All right, so this is the setup pretty much. So you always want the three columns for the three letters, the P, Q, R in this case, and then I put a column for this part, and then I put the last column is the whole thing. All right, and so there's two parts. Part A wants P to be true, so let's put a true there. So this would be true for P, since that's what they want. And then Q is F, and then R is true. All right, so now we have to figure out what this is going to be. So first you take not P. Anybody know what not P would be for this?
Wouldn't it be false? Because it's supposed to be the opposite.
Yeah, it's going to be the opposite. You're right. So if P is true, then not P has to be the opposite, which is false. So I'll just put a little F here. And not Q would be the opposite of false is
True.
true. So what is that going to equal? False and true equals
False.
false. Because for and, they both have to be true.
But and they both have to be true before or, then one could be true or one could be false.
That's right. Yeah, you got it. All right. And now, so the nice thing about breaking it up into smaller pieces, now we already know what this is. It's F. That's what we figured it out. Well, that's what we figured out. So let's just put an F. Or then here it says not R. Not R would be the opposite of T, which is F. All right. And so the final result for the entire thing would be false or false, which is false,
False.
right? Yeah, because at least one of them has to be true. So there is your the final answer would have been false. So you basically just want to break this up into smaller parts. Always start off with just the letters themselves. And then if it's a long statement like this one, then I would kind of cut it in half. Maybe right there is good. And so that's this column. And then once you figure out what that is, then you can plug it in for this, which is F. Then you do or, the not R was T was R, so therefore not T is F. Whoops. And then F or F is F. So let's do the second part, part B. P is F. Q is T. And R is T as well. So let's do this part. So that would be not P. Not P would be
True.
true. And not Q. What would not Q be?
False.
That would be false. And same thing as above, right? It's going to be F again because they for and they both have to be true. So that's a false again because of the and. And then since we already know this is false, or so what is that going to be? False or not R. The opposite of R is false again. So false or false is once again false. So we got false from both of them. So that's how you would do that one. Did that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, it did.
All right, good. All right, so let's you guys ready to jump into 3.3, which is today's topic?
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at 3.3. I already have it ready to go. Here it is. So now we're looking at truth tables. We're continuing our discussion on truth tables for conditional and biconditional. So remember, conditionals look like this. One-sided arrows. Biconditionals mean two-sided arrows. All right, so that's it. In this section, we discuss under what conditions a conditional statement is true and under what conditions a conditional statement is false. You get an A is our P statement. Our Q statement would be I buy you a car. All right, so consider the statement, if you get an A, then I will buy you a car. So see that if then, that's what a conditional statement is. That's what that means. Conditional is if then. So in this case, it's going to be if you get an A, if P, then Q, right? This is the symbol for that we use for that. That notation is the one-sided arrow. So whenever you see the keyword if, then, that means the one-sided arrow. All right, this statement is true, except I have actually broken promise to you. Okay, so what they're saying is that this will always be true unless there's a broken promise. So what they mean by that is if this is true and this is false, then that's a broken promise, right? Because you said something and you did something else. So that's what a broken promise means. That means that's the only time this will be false. So let's fill out the truth table for it. So we have true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. Those are the 4 different cases. And we're looking for P, if P, then Q, the conditional statement. So for the first one, it's going to be if true, then true. So there was no broken promise, right? They held up their end of the bargain, so this one is true. All right, the next one is if true, then false. If true, then false. That's a broken promise, right? The person got the A, but I didn't buy them the car. So that's where I broke my promise. So that's a false statement. All right, these ones are a little bit weird. If false, then true. This turns out to be a true statement, believe it or not, because you never broke a promise. You started off with a false statement, and then you ended up with the true. So that's not really a broken promise according to this. So that's still true, which is a little strange. And same thing with the last one. If false, then false. There's still no broken promise, so it's still true. So there's
Start off with a true, then in a false, it'll be false.
yeah, that's the only time. But if you start off with the false, it doesn't matter what happens after that. As long as you start with the false, your statement will be true. And if you start with the true and end with the true, it's still true. The only time it's false is when you start with the true and end with the false. That's the only time. So I'll write that here. Only, oh, only false when you have a true statement to begin with and you end up with the false. So that's the important thing to take from that. All right, so let's see if let's see when this would be true. So we fill out the same truth values for P and Q as we always do. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. All right, then we kind of just do this. So let's do the not P. The not P would be, for the first one, false, right? Because P is true, but if you negate it, it becomes false. And then the conditional statement, not Q, would be, for the first one,
Be
false.
false.
Yeah, so what would be the final result of this conditional statement? True or false?
Be false. Wouldn't it? Let me see.
It's
No,
only,
no, no, start off with a true, so it'd be
yeah,
false when,
it's only going to be false if you have a true followed by a false. But in this case, you start off with the false statement, so it's already going to be true to begin with.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange to think this way, but that's just the way that the definition of this goes. So for the next one, the negation of P would be false, right?
Right.
The opposite conditional statement. The negation of Q would be true.
True.
And by definition of conditional statements, this is going to be true because it starts off with the false. So this is also true. All right, the next one is going to be not P, which is true, right? Conditional. Not Q would be the opposite of T, which is false.
False.
And this is where we have our,
It's a false.
yeah, this is going to be a false statement because I promised something and I failed to deliver. That's a broken promise. That's an F for false. All right, and then the last one, if you negate P, you get T. And if you negate F, you get T.
T's will be true.
That will be true. All right. So there's the cases for when the only time this would be false is if you start, if P is false and Q is true, then this statement would be false. Otherwise, it's going to be true. All right, let's look at this one. So, conditional statement. So let's see. So now that's a biconditional because it's a two-sided arrow. All right, so let's start off with the different cases. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. All right, for this one, let me just double check the book. I don't want to make sure I don't say anything incorrect. So 1 second. All right, here it is. All right, so for this one, let's take a look at what this will look like. So basically it's the same thing as this, except you have to consider both directions. So imagine reversing the P and the Q, the arrow would go the opposite way. So now it's a double-sided arrow if you consider the other direction as well. So this is what it's going to look like. If you have true, true, let's just look at one side of the arrow first. Let's look at this side of the arrow first, going to the right. Would that be true? True, conditional true? Would that be false or true?
I think it'd be true.
Yeah. True, true. If true, then true. That's true. So that's true. Now let's go the opposite direction. Make the arrow go the opposite way. So if true, then true. Is that true? If true, then true. Same thing. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yes. So therefore, it works both sides. It's two-sided. So this is a true. All right. Now let's look at the next one, which says if true, then false. If true, then false. What do you guys think? Is that true or false? If you start with the true and then with the false?
False.
Yeah, that's a false. So automatically, you don't even have to check the other way, because if one side is false, it doesn't matter. The whole thing is false. So that's going to be a false. Because it has to work both ways in order for it to be true. All right, now let's look at the next one. If false, then true. If false, then true. Going in one direction, would this be true or false going in that direction?
They'd be true. Is
If
it-
false, then true. Yeah, you got it right. Because you're starting with the false, that means automatically it's going to be true. But what about the other direction? If you go to the left this time, if true, then false. Is that a true statement or a false statement? If you start with the truth and then you end up in a false,
That would be false.
yeah, that would be false, because you start with the true, you end with the false, that's false. So it works going to the right, but it's false going to the left. Therefore, overall, it's false because it doesn't work both ways. It only works one way. All right, the last one. If false, then false.
It's false.
Anybody? Not quite. Remember, if false, then false. That's true.
Oh, yeah. That's true. That's true.
And then what about the other direction? If you go to the left, if false, then false. Same thing. If false, then false. That's true. So in both directions, it's true.
So why is it true if both are false?
Oh, sorry. Why is the truth both the false? Because remember, we're looking at conditional statements. We're looking at that. The only time this is false is if you start with the true and end with the false, a broken promise. That's the only time it's false. But if it starts off false and it ends up false, it's true.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's like if it's true, it'd be true. So if it's false, it'd be true.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. So if true, I'm sorry, if false, then false, that's true. And then if you go to the left, if false, then false, that's also true. So it's true in both directions. All right, so this one's going to be true when both P and Q are true, and false when both P and Q are false. So if they're both true or they're both false, it's going to be true. But if one of them is true and one of them's false, then it's going to be false. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on, like a lot of different rules. So we have a rule for and, we have a rule for or, we have a rule for conditional, and now we have a rule for the biconditional. So there's 4 different rules you have to kind of pretty much know. This one means they both have to be true for the statement to be true. This one says only one of them has to be true. This one means it's only false if you start off with the true and end up with the false. And then the last one, it's true if they're both true or they're both false, then it's true. But if one of them is true and one of them is false, then it's false. So a lot of stuff to remember, but luckily these are all like open notes. So, I mean, if you forget, you can always refer to your notes. All right, let's try this next one. Here we go. T, 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 F, F, T, F, F. All right. So let's look at this one. So let's first negate P. If you negate P, you get F, right?
Right.
So that's a false. And then you have the double-sided arrow. And then Q, that's going to be true. So what do we think? Is this statement true or false? You can look up here to help you.
False.
Yeah, it's false. It's right there. Yeah, remember we said if one of them's true and one of them's false, then it's going to be false. All right. Oh, I messed up here. False when either P or Q, when P is true and Q is false, or vice versa. Basically, if you have one true and one false, the biconditional will be false. But if you have two that are the same, then it's going to be true. So in this case, you have 1 and 1, so that's why it's false.
False, okay.
This one, let's see, negate P. If you negate true, you get false. Double-sided arrow. And then Q, that's just false again. So anybody remember what happens if they're both the same?
It's true.
True.
It's going to be true, yeah. All right, and then the next one, you're going to negate P, which is going to be true. Double-sided arrow. Q is just the same as T. They're both the same, so therefore, should be true again, because they're both the same. All right, the last one, if you negate P, you get T. Double-sided arrow. Q is F. And there you go. If one of them is true and one of them is false, that means your final answer will be
False.
False.
false. All right. So that's how the biconditionals go. Let's see if there's anything else. All right. All right. Let's do this one together, and then maybe I'll have you guys do these two in your groups. So let's try this one. This will be the last one we do together. So true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. All right, the final statement should always be whatever the statement that's given to you. So whatever this statement is, that always goes in the last column. And then over here, you can break it up. I'm going to do this first part here to make our lives easier. So I'm going to put this one right there. All right. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's start with the first one. So not Q, that would be false, right? And P is true. So what do you guys think this turns out to be, true or false?
False.
That is false, yes. So now we can just put an F here. And then Q, or not Q, that means you have to negate the T, which is F. All right, anybody remember what this turns out to be? If false, then false.
True, right?
That's true, because the only time it's false is when it's
That
T.
the T is first. Or if
Yeah,
it's T, or if one of them is true and one of them is false.
yeah, exactly. So this is true overall. All right, so now let's do the next one. So the next one's going to be not Q. That would be true so far. And P is true again. So what is true and true? True and true is true. So now we can put a true here.
True.
Yeah, because this is the same as this. So that's why I put a T. All right, now the arrow. And then not Q. Negate Q. If you negate false, you get true. So if true, then true, what is that going to be?
True.
That is true.
True.
All right, got a couple more to go. Not Q. Negate T, that's F. And P, that's F again. F and F is,
True.
True.
oh no, that's the and.
False. False. That's false.
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
and.
That's an and, so it's false. So this is going to be false. And then the one-sided arrow, not Q, is F.
False.
So if false and false, that is
True.
true. All right, last one. Negate Q, that's T.
It's T.
And
And
P is F. T and F is
false.
false, right? Because they both have to be true for the and. For the and, they both have to be true for this to be true. So it's false, which means this is false. And then not Q would be T. If you start off with an F, automatically it's going to be true.
True.
So look at that. No matter what you do, this is going to be a true statement no matter what. No matter what these are. P can be true or it can be false. Q can be true or it can be false. It doesn't matter. This statement will always be true. All right. So there's a couple more to go. So let's see if you guys can do these two in your groups. So I'm going to give you guys some time to try those two out. Let me get you guys into some groups. True, false, false, true, false, false. So this is going to be true if and only if. This is going to be true or true. So what do you guys think? This is going to be true, right? True, double-sided arrow, true is true.
True.
All right, for this one, you're going to have true, double-sided arrow, false or true.
True.
False or true is true, right?
Yeah, right.
So you have true, double-sided arrow, true. That is true. All right, for the next one, you're going to have false, double-sided arrow, Q or
Or
P,
T or, oh,
yeah,
T or F, right?
true.
And then T or F is true. So this is going to be true.
yes.
And so is this going to be true or false? This statement, the F double-sided arrow.
It's gonna be false.
False.
Yeah, it's going to be false because if you have one false and one true, the double-sided arrow is false. All right. Whoops. And then the last one, we have false, double-sided arrow, false or false. So false or false is false. So what's a false, double-sided arrow, false?
True.
That's true.
That is true, yeah. False, double-sided arrow, false is true. There it is. So yeah, it is true. The last one is true. All right, next one. So same thing, we do true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. So let's see, this would be true or true, double-sided arrow, true or true. Well, these are going to be trues, right? So true, double-sided arrow, true. That is true. All right, for the next one, you're gonna have false or true, double-sided arrow. True or false. Since these are ors, these are both true.
True.
Those are both ors. So you have true, double-sided arrow, true. That is true. All right, the next one is going to be true or false, double-sided arrow, false or true. Same thing. These are true because they're ors. True, double-sided arrow, true is true. All right, the last one, you're going to have false or false, double-sided arrow, false or false.
And that's,
These are both going to be falses, right?
false.
So false, double-sided arrow, false is
True.
True.
true. So these are all true. All right, all trues, and this one only had one false. All right, these ones shouldn't be too hard because they give you the values for P, Q, and R. So you don't have to do all 4 cases. You only have to do 1 case. So I like these a little bit better because they're a little bit shorter. So P is true. So this would be not true, which is false, right? Because you have to negate the P, and the P is true, so that turns it into a false.
False.
What? One-sided arrow, you have Q, which is false. Arrow R, which is true. So I got the Q to be false and the R to be true. So what is this going to be? False or true? True or false? F, one-sided arrow, true.
True.
That's a true statement. Remember, if you start off with the false,
Mhm.
false, then true is true.
Okay.
So this would be true. Now you have F arrow T, which is true. It's true because you're starting with the false, so automatically it becomes a true. All right. So this one is going to be P, which is true. Arrow Q, which is false, or no, and R, which is true. So let's do the parentheses first. What do you guys think this is? False or true?
False.
It's a false because it has an and. Yeah, so this would be that becomes a false. And then if you have a true and then a false with an arrow,
That's false.
that's going to be false. So that's going to be, but then you have the negation in the front. That turns it into a true as a final answer because of a little negation in the front. So this part is false, but then when you negate it, it becomes true. All right, couple more to go. R is true, one-sided arrow, not P. If you negate the true, it becomes a false. And then you have Q, which is true. And then not R, oops, Q. Oh no, Q is false. Oops.
Q is false.
Yeah, Q is false. R is true. But then they want to negate the R, so that's going to be a false. And so let's do the parentheses part. What is this part? If true, then false.
That's false.
That's a false. And
And
if false, then false.
true.
That's a true. And then the final answer would have to be
False.
false because it's an and. Very good. That is correct. All right, last one. So P is true or Q is false. Double-sided arrow. P is true, not R. If you negate the R, that becomes a false. All right. So now let's do these parentheses first. What do you guys think this is? True or false?
True.
That is true, yeah, because it's an or. Double-sided arrow. What about this part?
That's false.
That's false because you're starting with the true and ending with the false. So that would be a false. All right, and then if you do this part, remember for the double-sided arrow, if you have one true and one false, what does that make it?
That's false.
That's gonna be false. But then if you negate the false,
True.
That'd be true.
final answer is gonna be true. Yeah. So that's the way these work. I like these because it gives
I like
you
these
just
better.
one.
I like these better.
I know, instead of having to do the whole table, right? You just have to do one case. Me
It
too.
just make you understand it a lot more. It's just with the table, it's just so much. These
Yeah,
are
there's-
at the bottom
Mm-hmm.
because you know orders of operation.
I definitely agree with that. Yes. So that's pretty much it. We didn't really take a break, so we're gonna just end class a little early today since we didn't take a break today. But let me just remind you, hold on, stop recording. Yes.